Property advice for real.
With Houza, the UAE's new home for buying, renting or selling a property.
And we've got not one but two experts in the studio this morning taking your questions, which are coming thick and fast, thank you very much, about off-plan property. Off-plan versus ready property. How do you make the decision about what to buy? Off-plan sales are on the rise. They currently represent more than half of all the sales transactions that we saw in Dubai in October and in September. Very pleased to be joined in the studio this morning by Sarah Hewerdine, who's Head of Marketing at Houza, and Fintan Flannelly, who's Head of Developer Sales at Allsopp Allsopp. Guys, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for asking us.
Thanks. Good morning.
And for those who would like to weigh in for questions on the subject this morning, 4001, or you can, of course, use our free messaging app. What's the WhatsApp number again, Tom?
0487155500.
So there you go. We've got questions coming in already for you guys. But let's start looking at why the off-plan market is growing so much. Q3 saw the highest number of off-plan sales transactions that Dubai has seen in the past decade. Why do we think this is?
I think a whole host of reasons. We've seen a really big growing demand for general real estate in Dubai, and specifically obviously in that secondary segment. But what you're finding is because there's a really high demand and a lower supply in that secondary market, people are looking towards off-plan as well. You've got in parallel to that the desire for upgraded units and renovated properties. So we've seen that in the secondary market. And you've also got a whole host of people now looking towards off-plan because it's going to be ready. It may hand over in 2 years, but you've got the added benefit of not having to deal with renovation costs, not having to deal with maybe additional maintenance costs. So you've got demand from both. And I think that's really what's pushing more towards the off-plan. And you've definitely got, and I guess Fintan will be able to weigh in more on this, but when it comes to the type of units that are coming to the market in the off-plan market, they're really meeting the buyer demand.
So, Fintan, what is the case for off-plan property? Why might someone be looking to buy off-plan rather than something that's standing?
Well, we've got two markets. We have our domestic market and our international market. And our domestic market, we're seeing a lot going for a lot of the more private developers, as well as the bigger developers, whereas their international market is going for the international and well-known developer. I think there's a couple of pain points there. So for the international buyer, we're looking at a lot of people looking to dollarize their real estate investment. So the euro, they don't feel very good about the eurozone. In the UK, they want to get their money out of the UK, for example. Then we look at the domestic market, and somebody is looking for something that doesn't exist in the market today. Okay, so the developers today are, during that COVID period, have had a time to kind of sit back and reassess the way forward. And now they're coming out with better communities. They've looked at the supply coming into the market. And the most successful developers are the ones that, as you, Sarah said, are satisfying that need at the moment.
Okay, but that's it from a market and an industry point of view. From a personal point of view, she says, why would someone looking to buy in a community want to buy off-plan rather than something that was already built? What are the advantages there?
Well, Sarah touched on this a moment ago and just said there's a couple of things there. A lot of people, if they're an end user, they want to live in that property themselves. There's a huge frustration at this point in time of finding a vacant on transfer property in a good community. So if you take, for example, if I have to buy a property and I'm buying with a mortgage, it could take 6 to 8 weeks for that to transfer. Then I have to serve a notice to vacate. So I'm already 14 months in. Whereas that property that they might be looking at off-plan, and we think about off-plan as primary, but there's off-plan secondary as well. And that is in the figures. That person is looking at maybe buying a property that would be ready in maybe 16 months, 20 months. So the time frame in an off-plan resale isn't that different maybe to actually buying a secondary home where they have to give a notice to vacate.
Yeah, and just to add on to that point as well, I think it comes down to, capital outlay is, if you're going to be buying in that secondary market, if you're buying from a developer for both, let's say you've got the 4% DLD fee and you've got the 2% brokerage fee, not too much difference there. But when it comes to the capital outlay for a secondary market, it's instantly 20% if you're going to put down the minimum loan to value. And then if you're also looking towards off-plan, you do have more attractive payment plans, maybe 5%, maybe 10%, and that's scattered as, the months go on. So you've got the added benefit of, a longer duration to pay that. But one thing I do always say to people is if you're somebody employed in a full-time job and you rely on your salary, you've got to have that cash ready. You can't be thinking, okay, I need to pay 10% in a year, I'll save up for that now. You need to be prepared for that. You don't know what's going to happen. We're talking about recession's going to hit next year. You just need to be prepared if you're going towards an off-plan unit, as you would be in the secondary market as well. But that definitely does skew more people towards off-plan because of the reduced capital outlay.
Let's look at how much it actually costs you to do it. Sarah mentioned the fees there. How does someone sit down and do the sums when they're judging things like the rent they were putting down where they're waiting for it to be built, where mortgage rates could be in 2 or 3 years' time when you're looking to maybe get a mortgage at a certain point in the build? Which of these numbers should you be considering?
I've always sat down with clients and I've always sat down with putting all the options on the table, looking at the secondary, going to the financial advisor that can give them the current updates and what's happening in the mortgage market. At the moment, we're seeing an awful lot of things happening there, rates going up, which is affecting people's the loans that they're able to get. This is actually driving some people to off-plan as well, because what they thought they could get at the start of the year is very different to what they can get now, but their aspiration for that home hasn't changed. So now they're jumping onto maybe an off-plan property where they know they can move into for example, a Harmony in Tilal Al Gaff. They know that's going to be ready in 16, 18 months. But as you mentioned there, it is starting with the financials. It's, understanding what you can afford, having that safety net to know that what if something should happen, that I have the cash there to make that next payment and I'm not relying on my income.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I do think it's also important when you're looking at the financials to understand what you want. Do you want to upgrade a unit? Because if you're doing a off-plan versus secondary analysis and you want to move into an upgraded unit, off-plan you get that. What's the cost in secondary? Look at that. If you're going to renovate the unit, does that mean you then have to go into a short-term rental for a period of time? That's going to cost you additional money. What's the ongoing maintenance cost for a secondary property? I would sit down with a spreadsheet and put all of these figures in and really weigh up, and also make sure you feel comfortable with whatever decision you're going to go down.
Here are the questions. Floor plans is one of them. Are off-plan units getting smaller? Do you effectively get less flat?
I think a couple of years ago we were going down to much smaller sizes, but I think now we've got better designed homes. So I'd rather a smaller, well-designed property than a larger one that isn't. Again, such a variety in the market, it's hard to generalise, are we getting smaller? But we are getting much better designed homes, implementing smart home technology as well.
We've got questions coming in about mortgages as well, and I know this differs by developer. So what can you tell me, not just about when you can get a mortgage, but how guaranteed, if it can be guaranteed, that you will get one at a certain point?
So typically with off-plan, you've got to wait until there's bricks and mortar there, until you can then mortgage the remainder of the property. Once you've kind of got that built certificate, that is when you can start mortgaging the property. So it depends on when the handover is. One thing I would always say to people is making sure that if handover is, let's say, Q3 of 2024, give yourself more of a buffer, allow for additional time before that handover comes in, and then you can mortgage the property.
Which actually leads us to one of the other questions. What happens if it doesn't get handed over or it's late?
This is an inherent risk with off-plan. You can have issues with contractors, but what I'd look then is look at the developer, that if there's going to be issues, have they got the skill set and management that can actually deal with these? What's the track record of the developer? So before you even go and sign an SPA or look at a project, look at the developer and look at the people behind it before you go down that route.
What do they owe you if they are late? How does compensation work?
Well, the developer has typically an SPA up till 12 months beyond the anticipated completion date to deliver. I've seen cases where it's run beyond that, but there has been no compensation.
Because
I think a lot of people probably don't want to take it to the courts because of what's involved. It's the time, it's the energy, it's the emotion that people put in on going down that journey that they probably don't do it. But as long as they get their keys and they get what they've been promised, they're just happy to move forward.
well, the other half of that is what happens if you can't pay, if you get half the way through, as you mentioned earlier, Sarah, circumstances change. How much leeway or buffer does a buyer get?
I think it definitely depends developer to developer. Fintan, you can probably answer more on
Yeah.
the specifics of that.
So typically, once you've bought the property and you've signed your SPA, it's going to be registered with Dubai Land Department, and you'll get the OCUD. So the OCUD is like the pre-title registration on the property. So once you've had that and you've met your commitments of the payment plan, then you can actually resell it. Now, different developers will have that milestone will have to be once you've paid 30%, they'll issue an NOC for resale. So then you've owned that property. So even though it's not complete, you can go into the resale market. So that's what's happening in the moment. So a couple of years ago, where people were maybe getting a payment plan of 30% during construction, 70% on handover, they're actually selling that. And the way the market has carried, in some cases like Peninsula One, I did some figures, we're seeing on a studio 58% return on the cash they had put down within 12 months, and on a one bed 60%.
Oh, we're talking speculation there, though, at that point, are we not?
Yeah, but I think what you got to look at that one from day one, it was a fantastic piece of real estate, and the payment plan at that point in time, 12 months ago, was only 30% down. Now some developers in the market are actually increasing that you've got to pay 50% before they give you an NOC. So with a developer, this is a very important thing to find out. What if I need to exit before completion? What is the milestone that I have to pay? Now, if the new person coming in has to pay 50%, that's going to be a much smaller market, because now we're looking for a client that has a larger cash available to them.
Are we seeing things get tighter on the ability to, I mean, you can call it resale, you can call it flipping.
Yeah, I'll say resale.
Okay. Are we seeing conditions get tighter on that?
No, as I said, once you own that, and once you've met the milestone. So, for example, like Harmony in Tel Al Gaf, I won't give specifics on this. There are people that one wait 3 years, but now it's going to be ready in 16, 18 months. That time frame works for them. So now people are going in there and they realise that a 4.3 million, a fantastic new 4-bed home, I'll buy that. And there's a market there for those people that came in to pull out $1 million out of their investment of probably they've paid 1.2 million.